Tired of long waits and rushed care at the ER and urgent care clinic? Next time, stay home and let Dispatch Health bring the power of the hospital to you.
I call Dispatch Health. A care team of medical professionals actually come to your house.
They're the same caliber of people that you would see if you were at a hospital or an urgent care.
Dispatch Health can treat most non-life-threatening emergencies.
They can do the x-rays, they can do stitches,
urinary tract infections, blood test, urinalysis, ultrasound.
It's almost everything that they can do at the ER.
You never feel rushed. They're there for you and only you.
I felt like their only patient.
And it costs no more than a trip to urgent care because Dispatch Health is covered by most insurance, including Medicare. See if we serve your home at dispatchhealth.com.
Dispatch Health really went above and beyond.
It's wonderful to have care come to your home.
House calls are back, and they're better than ever. Learn more at dispatchhealth.com.
Welcome to the Boneyard with Steve Robertson. As always, I am your good friend and host, Steve Robertson, here on the Maroon Friday edition of the Yard. Hope you're wearing maroon today. Hope you are. And isn't it great that we live in a country we can celebrate Maroon Friday as we wish? I hope you've got a cool employer that allows you to rep the Bulldogs. It's a big ball game weekend. Looking forward to that. I'm going to be hitting the road here a little bit later today. Not going straight to Lexington, though. I'm going to swing through Birmingham and go to the Lyric Theater and go see Steve Vai in concert, then push on up into Nashville and spend the night, finish up the drive tomorrow. So we're going to make a weekend of it, Bulldogs. How about that? Looking forward to that. Looking forward to the show. Looking forward to the ball game. It's one of those things, too, when you've got a nighttime game like that, you can kind of work in some other activities. And so I try to, because the rock never stops with me. Speaking of, I've got a really cool top 10 list today, too. Of all the top 10 lists I've done recently, I think this is one of the more important ones. And I don't say that because, we're gonna commemorate some hair band. No, we're going to give you some new blood today, some outstanding bands of a certain genre that I know many of you love. And no, it's not bluegrass. It's not. You know how it was when we grew up in small town Mississippi? You know, we'd have that thing at the park every year. You know what I'm talking about? Oh, we're going to go have the fall festival, or we're going to have Pumpkin Palooza or whatever, and we're just going to get out there and say the same old arts and crafts we've always sold, and we'll have, Fat Jim and the Slim Pickers get out there and play some bluegrass for us. And all due respect to those people, I mean, obviously there's a market for that. But, I'd like to think that we've evolved a little bit too, but also kind of held true to some of our values. But I'm excited about the top 10 list today because of the fact that I think that there are some very deserving artists. They're going to get some play from some of you all. And I think you're going to listen to some of these bands. You'll be like, you know what? This is outstanding. This is outstanding. This is a list that is kind of near and dear to my heart in many respects. So look forward to that. Of course, we're going to break down a little more of the ball game with Kentucky and Mississippi State. I spent a lot of time this week. I probably have dug deeper into Kentucky this week than I have anybody in a couple years. Spent a lot of time, watched some games, went back and looked at some tendencies. Not that I'm coaching the game, but I just want to know what to expect. And Steve Spurrier Jr. said on Wednesday that they expect to get defended kind of like they did last year, which is interesting. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. I wrote an article about it yesterday. I'm going to give you some of the highlights a little bit later in the show. Let's thank our friends at Bulldog Burger Company. I love Bulldog Burger Company, and now when you go up there, there's a chance that my youngest son may greet you and seat you. He is now part of the Bulldog Burger Company family. Very honored that they hired him to work there. And that's one thing I'll say. All of my children have wanted to work, and I think some of that is because they have seen me work. They understand the importance of getting out, and that was passed down to me by my father. But I'm glad that my son's not having to work on a dairy farm like my grandfather's sons did. But the reality of it is Bulldog Burger Company is a great place to work, a great place to eat, a great place to go hang out. So if you're looking for the opportunity to go out with friends for an adult beverage, Bulldog Burger has you covered. If you want to go out with the family and just have a fam night, they got you handled there too. It's a multifaceted experience there at Bulldog Burger Company. 3 great locations to serve you. University Drive here in Start Vegas. That brand new patio area, get a lot of good reviews about that. And also the store there the location there in Gloucester Street in Tupelo. And then, of course, in addition to that, the newest one, Lake Harbor Drive there in the Ridge and Flowwood area. Be sure and go check them out. Have the spring rolls as your appetizer. They'll make you and everybody around you better looking. and maybe get that chocolate shake to go. Take dessert on the run. That is a really cool thing there, because sometimes you need a palate cleanser, right? It's like, well, we're kind of in a hurry. I don't really want to have to hang around and wait for another course of meal. And just maybe let your server know as you're getting ready to get the check, hey, we'd like to maybe get that chocolate shake to go. An outstanding opportunity at Bulldog Burger Company. I love them. They love me. You will love them too, and they will love you right back. Bulldog Burger Company, the place where people go to meet. M-E-A-T. All right, let's get into our SEC preview. In our genespage.com picks, we're picking against the spread this year. And I worried a little bit about that, to be quite honest with you, because the spread is such a volatile thing. I'm going to give you the standings, because we're at the halfway point right now. We're at the halfway point, and I think that this is it's time for us to kind of take this thing seriously. So real quickly here, these are our picks. Here are the standings against the spread, right? And this is everybody on our staff that does this. So bringing up the rear, Dave Murray is 34-28 this season against the spread. And he's picked kind of a couple games differently than me this week, so either he's going to make up some ground on me or he's going to lose more ground to me. But 34-28. Fourth in our standings is Paul Jones, 36-26. And Paul and I also have a couple this week that are opposite. Could be an interesting week. Could be moving week. Third on the list is our friend Robbie Falk. He's 38-24 on the season against the spread. And we're just picking SEC games. He's tied with second with Mike Nemeth. And then up in front with a 2-game lead at the halfway point, it's the Atlanta Braves. No, it's not. It's your good friend and host, Steve Robertson, 40-22 on the year. So it's been interesting. I think the spread makes it a little more intriguing because of the fact that you just never know. It's not just about picking a winner. You know, one of the things, too, it's a little bit crazy, too. I actually picked Vanderbilt to cover against Georgia this week. 38's a big number. It is. And the fact that both of them run the football. You know, again, Georgia's capable of beating Vandy by as many as they want to. But, I don't know. I just, for some reason, call it a gut feeling. I think Vandy covers. And they're not going to come anywhere close to winning, but I think they cover. All right, let's take a look at these games. There are a lot of people that think, and I may be completely wrong here, there are a lot of people that think Auburn is going to give Ole Miss a game at home. I don't think so. I hate to say it this way, but I like this Ole Miss team. Yeah, I don't like Ole Miss, don't get me wrong. But I like this team. I think they're improved on defense. I know that they were good last year. I just think, the transfer portals worked out well for them on defense. And this running game, I mean, this is, and give Lane Kiffin some credit too, completely changed the offense basically in a year. They're running some of the same concepts, but they're really more of a run-first team this year. It's worked out well for them. Now, granted, they have played a very pedestrian schedule so far. I mean, the best team they've played is Kentucky, who is really middle of the road in the league. But they've done what you should do against those teams. Maybe don't have the killer instinct against Tulsa. Didn't score in the second half. It's only human nature. You get a huge lead at the half and you coast a little bit. But I just don't see Auburn giving Ole Miss a game. I would love for that to happen. I'd love to see Ole Miss lose this week. I just don't see it. And you look at this Auburn thing, and maybe this is where some of this is coming from. Auburn is a desperate team. Brian Harsin is, fighting for his job. And, the thing that we've learned about life, too, if you get fired as a college football coach, you're kind of set for life. It's good work if you can get it. But they're 3-3. And there really there's not a gimme left on the schedule. So at some point, you kind of got to dig in your heels. But it's so interesting to look at how this team has played the last 3 weeks, talking about Auburn. They eke out a win in overtime against Missouri. Had they lost that game, Brian Harsin may have been fired before sundown. But they win the game. Missouri basically gifts them the game. The guy's going in with the go-ahead score and fumbles the football into the end zone. Auburn recovers. The game is over. If you read their message boards and their social media commentary, people were like, if I wish we'd lost. It feels like we lost, even though we won. And that's what happens when you're on the bottom of the pile in this league. Even when you win, you don't get the euphoria of winning because it doesn't mean anything. The next week, Auburn rides the momentum of that huge win over Missouri, and they jump out to a 17-0 lead against LSU at home. And you know what? And people thinking, you know what? Okay, we're all right. We're good. Eventually, LSU wore them down. They come back to win that game late. It's amazing, too, to think, we talk about LSU being a little bit lucky. LSU's got some grit about them, too. They got routed last week, but LSU's got a little grit about them. But, you go back and look at this thing here. 17-0, and then Auburn comes back and surrenders, a touchdown here, because I go back and think about this now that I look at the recap here. Auburn was up 17-0 with the football late in the second quarter, and they fumble, and it's returned for a touchdown. Now all of a sudden LSU has life, and then Jaden Daniels leads them down the field, a 77-yard drive, 11 plays, in under 2 minutes. Have we seen that before? That kid running a 2-minute drill right before the half? We absolutely have against us. And they cash in. So it's 17-14. So for a quarter and a half, Auburn dominates this football game and then doesn't score again the rest of the game. It's crazy. And Brian Harsin was supposed to be this offensive guru. And then you got to go to Georgia. And let's be honest. I mean, anybody that's got to go to Georgia, you might as well not bring your best effort sometimes. I mean, I hate to excuse it that way, but you're going to get beat. And so Georgia handles Auburn 42-10. And so you've had, back-to-back very close games. But I think really Auburn's problems, you go back even in a non-conference. They didn't play well in non-conference. So you can't expect them to get better in conference. Going on the road to play an Ole Miss team that is really confident right now, it's just a recipe for disaster. I think Ole Miss wins this game and covers. It could be a tussle for a while. I just think in the end that ground game is going to wear Auburn down. That Auburn defensive front is pretty good. There's just not enough playmakers on this team. I think Ole Miss wins this game handily. Would love to be wrong, but the reality of it is Ole Miss is the better football team. All right, Vanderbilt at Georgia. I told you I expect Vanderbilt to cover. There's no way this is a game. None whatsoever. You look and say, well, Steve, Georgia struggled a little bit with Samford. Yeah, they struggled a little bit with Kent State. Maybe there's a lack of leadership on this team. Maybe they're not getting up to go, maybe they're playing down level their opponents. Do you remember early in the year when Vandy jumped out through a 3-0 lead? And everybody's like, look at Vandy. I guess that's not right. They were 2-0, and they lost to Wake Forest. That's right. They opened up. They go to Hawaii, and they smash Hawaii, which I was wrong. I picked Hawaii. And then they beat Elon, which is one step up from the University of Phoenix. And then Wake goes into Vanderbilt and basically doubles them up 45-25. Vanderbilt struggles with Northern Illinois. And you know what? You know who else struggled with Northern Illinois? Kentucky. In case you didn't know, Northern Illinois is 1-5 on the year and gave 2 SEC teams fits. And then, of course, Vanderbilt loses to Alabama as we expect. And then, Ole Miss struggled with them for a half, but then that ground game took over in the second half, and they win. Of course, and another thing I'll say, too, and I mentioned this, too, on Monday's show. I want to reiterate this because some new details have emerged. People are upset about Ole Miss punching that last touchdown in. Guys, it was a walk-on. Why would you deny that guy the opportunity? It's not like they're rubbing it in. They have walk-on in there. I mean, come on. I mean, not that I'm going to sit here and give Ole Miss grace for anything, but, I mean, why would you deny a kid that opportunity? You absolutely wouldn't do that. You're happy for the kid. But Ole Miss wins 52-28, and so, this Clark Lee team, as he mentioned in the preseason, they're one day going to be the best college football program in the country. Well, it's not going to be this year. Certainly not. And you begin to look at the schedule. There will be 3-4 after the weekend. And you begin to look and see what's left. It is a murderer's row in many respects. South Carolina has to go to Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt nearly beat them in Columbia last year. And Vanderbilt goes to Kentucky. Florida goes to Vanderbilt. Tennessee goes to Vanderbilt. They got off to the 3-1 start. They're going to end up 3-9. That's just how it's going to be. I mean, where do you see a win? Maybe they can compete with South Carolina. Maybe. You just don't see it. It's a different brand of athlete. It just is. Maybe people need to talk to James Franklin, figure out what he had going there. I mean, obviously he had Charles Huff, right? I was watching a little bit of that Marshall UL game the other day. Charles with a headset on. Interesting. All right, the game of the week, probably not just in the SEC, but in the nation. And there's some big games. A lot of undefeated teams going head-to-head. Alabama and Tennessee. A lot of people are picking Tennessee. They say, well, it's a toss-up game. It's in Knoxville. You favor the home team. Is it really a toss-up game? I mean, let's be honest with ourselves. I love this Tennessee team. I believe, in many respects, I was one of the few in the Southeastern Conference media that picked Tennessee second in the East. I love this team. I think Handon Hooker is outstanding. I don't think that he is probably maybe the guy that some people suggested he is, because I think he's more of a dual threat guy. But I'll tell you this, he's not one of these raw athlete passers. The guy's pretty polished as a passer. But I like this team. And this Tennessee run defense is legit. But here's the thing that I go back to. And I don't care who you are or where you're from. Alabama is in this moment every single week. Tennessee has probably not been in a position like this in a decade or more. They've had some big games, right? Big games against like Mississippi State and Ole Miss. But when is the last time Tennessee truly had a game on a national stage that really had potential national championship implications? Alabama has beat Tennessee 15 straight times. And so, you know what, Steve? I don't have anything to do with this week. I'm a firm believer in that, history repeats itself in some respects. But you're right about that. This Tennessee team has never lost to Alabama. It's a completely different team than the team that played last year. But if you're Alabama, you think, you know what? We always beat these guys. We beat them. We'll find a way to win. Many of these games have not been competitive. Tennessee and Alabama was competitive for a while last year, and then Alabama took over late. Of course, a lot of it hinges on Bryce Young. If Bryce Young plays and it's close to 100%, I think you're good to go. But you start running these numbers. I mean, it's like 48-17, 35-13, 58-21, 45-7, 49-10. You go all the way back to 15. That was a competitive game, 19-14. That's the exception, though. Most of these games have been absolute bloodlettings. And it hasn't really mattered where they played. Now, again, Tennessee playing with a lot of juice, playing at home. I think it's going to be a ball game. But I think ultimately Alabama wins this game. I do expect Alabama to cover. It's one of the things we've learned about St. Nick is that when everybody kind of counts them out, and including some of us, Nick rises to the occasion. Alabama rises to the occasion. How many of us expected Alabama to win the SEC championship game last year? Be honest. The way that Georgia defense was playing, we said, you know what, they're going to beat Saban. And they didn't. They got him back in a national championship game. But Alabama crushed Georgia. You don't think Nick Saban's been getting ready for this? Every time that people, the dynasty's over, and they just go win a national championship, right? A couple of years ago, Alabama won a national championship, but weren't even the best team in the country. That's what great coaching does for you. I like Alabama to win the game, and better luck next year, Tennessee. And they're going to lose a lot, but it's good. I think the SEC needs Tennessee to be good. But for the first time in a long time, this game actually means something. And I don't think anybody's going to begrudge Tennessee for losing this game, even though it's at home. It's a chance for them to take the next step. I just don't think they're quite ready to do it. Okay, Arkansas at BYU. A battle of teams that were previously ranked in the top 25. They're not anymore. Arkansas is expected to have KJ Jefferson back. I think it's a W. I know BYU is favored in this game. I think Arkansas is a better team. Watched BYU play earlier this year. But you begin to look at this thing with Arkansas. And it's interesting, shall we say. Arkansas and some Arkansas fans would disagree with this, but they have been kind of a media darling, and I think some of that is because of the fact that people like Sam Pittman so much. Now, you think he's a nice guy, and you think, I'd like to see him do good. Like to see him do well. Well, I don't know that's really been the case. They're 3-3 now. Of course, they get off to the 3-0 start, and they're in the top 10. And I think we all knew that was kind of a byproduct of the fact that they were ranked already and just kind of trended their way up as other teams lost. And then they lose to A&M. Shouldn't have lost the ball game. They did. A&M made the place to win. Give A&M credit. But if K.J. Jefferson doesn't dive from the 4-yard line, it's probably a different conversation today. But they lose the ball game they shouldn't. Alabama crushes them, and I know that Arkansas made some plays in the middle of that ball game, but Alabama got after them. And then Mississippi State beats them by the same margin the next week. Alabama wins by 23. State wins by 23. And this defense has kind of been exposed. But what's interesting, too, about the Sam Pittman experience, I don't know that people have really looked into this. Nobody talks about this. And, again, maybe it's because people like Sam so much. And I like Sam Pittman. I've never met the guy, but transcribing his press conferences and watching how he interacts with people. The guy seems like a good dude. I mean, it seems like a guy you'd love to kind of sit down and have a meal with. He just seems like a very good, down-to-earth type dude. But what's interesting, and let's go back to 2020, and it's interesting that, everybody acts like Mike Leach is, some leper or something. But you look at the results that Leach and Sam Pittman have had now, Leach is better off. Now, to be fair, Sam Pittman's the first-time head coach. But, they get off, we look back at 2020, they get off to the 2-2 start. They beat State and Ole Miss. And everybody thinking, hey, well, look at this, because they should have beat Auburn too. They got cheated out of the ball game. Let's just call it what it is. Auburn Jesus comes through for Auburn, or should we say the SEC office comes through for Auburn. Should have been a fumble. It wasn't. So Arkansas should have been 3-1. And then they lose to A&M, and they beat Tennessee. And you're thinking, hey, these guys hey, look at this, man. And then they didn't win another game. So they get the lead here. It's like you look at the season. They get off to the good start, and then end the year on a 4-game losing streak. You say, but Steve, but COVID. Okay, I'll grant you that. There were some issues. Even Sam himself had COVID. Let's look back at last year. Okay? They get off to the 4-0 start. They beat Rice, beat Texas, beat Georgia Southern, and beat A&M. They're the talk of college football. They go to Sanford Stadium, and people are thinking, oh, they're going to beat Georgia. They get smashed. 37-0. Then they lose to Ole Miss, 52-51. Then they lose to the Auburn Tigers, 38-23, and perhaps the best game of Bo Nix's career at Auburn. Then they beat Arkansas Pine Bluff. They have the week off, and then we get cheated up there, right, on that Martin Emerson call. Not their fault. But they have these lulls in the middle of the season, and they kind of figured it out late. Of course, they beat us in a tight game. They beat LSU in a tight game in overtime. They give Alabama a game, and then they beat Missouri, and then they win the ball game. But there are these stretches in all three seasons with Sam Pittman, and it's not necessarily against the best teams. Like, it'd be one thing if you had, Georgia, Auburn, or Georgia, Alabama, and Tennessee back-to-back weeks, and you can kind of explain it. But, you're losing to a pretty pedestrian Auburn team. You lose to Ole Miss. Listen, Rebels were good last year, but that's a game you should have won. But that's the thing I look at. It's like you look up and down, and there just seems to be, once everybody gets a little tape on what Arkansas is doing, things kind of unravel a little bit. And again, this year, you get off to the 3-0 start, and now you've lost 3 in a row. So again, there is this lull in the season. A&M, pretty average team, I think we'd say at this point. Alabama, a great team, maybe not what they have been, but still a great team. And Mississippi State, an improving team. Now you go to BYU. BYU is awfully interesting too. BYU is 4-2 on the year. They open up with the big win over South Florida. They beat number 9 Baylor, who has really fallen by the wayside as of late. They get smashed at Oregon. They beat Wyoming, beat Utah State, and then lose to Notre Dame 28-20. This is a BYU team that has been tested. They're not going to be the least bit intimidated with Arkansas coming to their stadium. So we'll see what happens. I'm going to pick Arkansas. I think KJ Jefferson wills this team to a win. But looking at this, I think it's going to be a wild game. The Arkansas defense, not great. BYU offense, pretty good. I think it's going to be a very entertaining game. And maybe that's something you tune in and watch. Is coffee part of your morning routine? It is for me. And I found the secret, guys. It's called the good stuff. Make it part of your normal coffee routine. I don't know that I could make it through the morning without a good cup of joe. The good stuff makes it taste even better, and I've noticed significant improvements in how I feel each and every day. I don't have those up and down roller coaster type moments. I've had more energy without the typical crash. I'm more focused, and I've even noticed my skin and hair looking better. People have even commented, Steve, you're looking younger. Perhaps the good stuff is part of that transformation. Formulated by pro golfer Phil Mickelson and elite performance coach Dave Phillips, the good stuff will stimulate your metabolism, increase focus, support skin and joint health, and reduces the coffee jitters. For a limited time, Boneyard listeners can get 20% off, free shipping, and a free starter kit worth over $30 on their first purchase of the good stuff. Simply go to ForWellness, that's F-O-R, wellness.com/Boneyard to save on your first purchase. There's nothing like adding something new and getting to save some money in the process. So 20% off your first order plus free shipping and a free starter kit worth over $30 for a limited time when you visit forwellness.com/Boneyard. Again, that's FORWELLNESS.com/Boneyard. This is for wellness. Best offer right now, so don't wait. Order today. They're so sure you'll see the benefits of adding the good stuff to your coffee. They even back every purchase with a 60-day money-back guarantee. If you're not completely satisfied, you can get a full refund. Again, that's forwellness.com/Boneyard.
Tired of long waits and rushed care at the ER and urgent care clinic? Next time, stay home and let Dispatch Health bring the power of the hospital to you.
I call Dispatch Health. A care team of medical professionals actually come to your house.
They're the same caliber of people that you would see if you were at a hospital or an urgent care.
Dispatch Health can treat most non-life-threatening emergencies.
They can do the x-rays, they can do stitches.
Urinary tract infections, blood test, urinalysis, ultrasound.
It's almost everything that they can do at the ER.
You never feel rushed. They're there for you and only you.
I felt like their only patient.
And it costs no more than a trip to urgent care because Dispatch Health is covered by most insurance, including Medicare. See if we serve your home at dispatchhealth.com.
Dispatch Health really went above and beyond.
It's wonderful to have care come to your home.
House calls are back, and they're better than ever. Learn more at dispatchhealth.com.
Before our game. LSU at Florida. This is another one that could go either way. It's just so interesting to think about. Beginning of the year, I really thought Florida might be a little bit better than they are, and they still have time to turn it around. They're 4-2. It's not like you look at the schedule and like they're behind the chains by any stretch. And they beat Utah that first week. They lose to Kentucky, which that surprised me, to be honest with you. And you know what? Thumbs up for Kentucky. Anytime that you go in a swamp and win, it's a big deal. And then South Florida. Florida survives that game, 31-28. That's the night we went down to LSU, and you know the rest. And then Florida gives Tennessee all they want and then some in Knoxville. They blow out Eastern Washington, and then they squeak by Missouri. Which Florida team's going to show up this week? I had somebody tell me Billy Napier is kind of the master of the one-possession game. There's a bunch of those. I think this one boils down to that. I think LSU at Florida, the swamp will be, I don't know if it'll be rocking, because I don't know if the people are fully on the bandwagon yet. But there'll be a lot of people there. It'll be a good atmosphere. This is two teams that are basically equal. So the toss-up, we're going to go with the home team. We're going to go with Florida here. But it's so interesting to look at this LSU schedule. And what a difference that extra point made, right, against Florida State. LSU would be 5-1 right now, and probably the win last week for Tennessee probably would have been over a top 10 team. It's amazing how much LSU has kind of floundered around this year. You lose to Florida State, you smash Southern, you beat Mississippi State, which is your best win of the year. Beat New Mexico, you beat a struggling Auburn team barely. You get smashed by Tennessee. We knew that LSU would be okay, be a little bit better than last year. We knew they were in transition. They lost a lot in the portal. A lot of people forget that. LSU lost a lot in the portal. And a lot of guys went pro too. But I just think Florida at home is going to be too much for this LSU team and Jaden Daniels. I think they have the athletes to chase Jaden Daniels. So we'll take Florida, and I'm going to give you more about the Mississippi State-Kentucky game later in the show. But let me give you your winners this week. A lot of confidence in these picks, to be quite honest with you. Ole Miss wins. Georgia wins. Alabama wins. Arkansas wins. Florida wins. And Mississippi State wins. I think those are your winners this week. We're going undefeated, guys. 6-0, going undefeated. But again, there's some games in here that are kind of coin flip type games. But I based on what I have seen, what I've observed, I feel good about the picks. But you just never know in college football. You never know what's going to happen. You just simply never know. Maybe there's a blocked punt here. There's an injury there. There's always something that makes it awfully interesting. It's kind of been the year of the backup quarterback in the SEC so far, right? Ole Miss has started a couple different quarterbacks. Alabama started a couple different quarterbacks. Auburn started a couple different quarterbacks. Kentucky. You can go all the way down the list. A lot of teams. Of course, Arkansas, Texas A&M. Just about everybody, with rare exception, has started multiple quarterbacks this year. I don't know that we expected that. But that's where we are today. So, again, that's your winners. And hopefully you guys have a good weekend, too, those of you that get out and kind of wager on these games. I don't do that. I've learned the hard way. It's just better to pick for fun. All right, time for today's top 10 list. Brought to you by my friend, your friend, Blair Chandler. Great young guy. Just a cute little kid, really. 21 years of experience in the mortgage industry. I've said before, nobody stays in that line of work for 20-plus years unless they're winning. They won't keep you around. They're not going to keep you around just because they think you're nice. You got to produce. That's what Blair does. Blair is the guy that gets things done. Maybe you're one of those kind of people. Maybe somebody right now, in the sound of my voice, is facing foreclosure. Right? I mean, let's just get down to brass tacks in this thing. Sometimes you need help, and you don't know where to turn. Blair and I have had conversations before about instances in the past where you've had people like that are facing losing their home, and Blair's been able to come up with a plan and get them taken care of. It's not easy. That's why you need a mortgage professional to guide you through a process like that. Go to closewithblair.com. That's C-L-O-S-E with Blair, B-L-A-I-R.com. Or call or text him today on his personal cell number, 601-500-2344. Again, 601-500-2344. You never know what's going to happen in life. Sometimes people lose jobs or things that happen, plants close, and maybe you're in a situation like that where you don't feel like you know where to turn. Turn to my friend Blair Chandler. Anonymity is guaranteed. Contact him today. Get yourself taken care of. Maybe you need to refinance or consolidate some debt, get some cash out. Whatever you need to do, Blair can handle all of your mortgage needs at closewithblair.com. Okay, I've kind of hyped up this top 10 list. I'm proud of this list. I'm excited about this list. I'm excited to see your reaction to this list. We're doing new Southern rock. These are 10 Southern rock bands that if you don't know, you need to know. Now, some of them tour more than others, and some of them, there's one in particular from Mississippi. I can't tell if they're together or broke up. I mean, it's kind of like the Kardashians, whatever. You never know who they're dating. But the reality of it is, these are 10 Southern rock bands that you need to know. Some of them skew a little bit blues. Some of them skew a little country, but they're all Southern rock. Some more bluesy and jazzy than others. but you're going to like them all. Now, there's enough for everybody here. There is enough meat on the bone for everybody to get a bite of what they like and enjoy it. Everybody can get fed at Rose Bowl's Top 10 table today. So I'm going to start with a band that I'm closely affiliated with, and their debut single is out there on an EP. They were the openers at Rock Vegas. It's the Crazy Kids down from around Crystal Springs, Mississippi. It's Four-Way Stop, and the only original tune you can get right now is Wicked Woman, and I hope that we can find it on Spotify and have it on the list. But Wicked Woman from Four-Way Stop, they've got an EP on iTunes, on Apple Music, that them doing some covers, and then Wicked Woman. Of course, it's live, but Ryan Purser, who is also a Boneyard listener, is an up-and-coming vocalist. And we're going to do some things. You know, I got some friends. We're going to try to get these guys a little more exposure. But number 10 on your list is Four-Way Stop's Wicked Woman, of new Southern rock bands you should know. All right, number 9, if you like blues guitar, the Marcus King Band might just be for you. It is a blue-collar, gritty appeal in this track. Everything about this is great. It's a song called The Well. I think you're going to absolutely dig that one. And he's got some other ones that are pretty good, too. Got a couple of albums out there, and be sure and check them out. And, again, very bluesy, but it's the up-tempo blues, too. Number 8, I should have put this one a little bit higher, to be quite honest with you. It's Caleb Johnson, and if you don't know Caleb Johnson, I think you're gonna be extremely excited when you put his catalog on. This track, Devil's Daughter, is absolutely legit. I listened to some Caleb Johnson, listened to the whole album one time through, went back and listened to it again. A lot of good tracks. It's a difficult decision to decide which way to go. I think Devil's Daughter is probably the greatest representation of the Caleb Johnson catalog. And a lot of these bands are from the South. You know, Mississippi and Baton Rouge and Nashville and Alabama. Number 7, Robert John and the Wreck. Shine a Light on Me, brother. Now this is kind of bluesy. Also a little bit, there's almost a little gospel influence in this. It's a good timing band, but they got choral arrangements and everything. It's quite the deal, man. I mean, it's one of these bands, you turn it on, it's like the whole thing feels like a party. Robert John and the Wreck. And that's off the brand new album for them. Number 6, a band from Mississippi. I haven't seen these guys live yet. It's a shame. I got to make it a point to go do that. And it seems like here as of late, when I've looked at their dates, they've kind of conflicted with the fact that we got college football to cover, right? So I haven't seen them yet. I hope to. We've talked about them on the show before. It's a band from Gulfport, Mississippi. It's Magnolia Bayou. I went with one of my favorite tracks. My favorite one is probably When a Good Dog Goes Bad. But the song Sweet Magnolia is absolutely beautiful. The vocal arrangement is amazing. Instrumentation is amazing. There's also a song on that particular album called Tupelo. You may dig that one. But Sweet Magnolia, it's just one of those that just hits you right in the right spot, makes you feel all warm inside. All right, number 5, another band from Mississippi. And again, I never know what's going on with these guys. Every time I turn around, they're back together, they're not back together, they're going to do this show, they're not doing a show. They don't like you. It's the Native Sons of Natchez, Mississippi. It's Bishop Gunn. A lot of people would have gone with Alabama here, which Alabama is a amazing song. Tells a crazy tale. It's wonderful. But I went with one that's a little bit tuned down a little bit. It's The Devil is a Woman. It's even like I mentioned to Robert Johnson, and it's a great song, very powerful song. All right, the next 4 though. I love every band so far. The next 4. This is next level stuff, man. Number 4, we've talked about this. This song has been on a top 10 list before, and it was on the Like Father, Like Son list that we did when I was out in Omaha. It's Tyler Bryant and the Shakedown, On to the Next. I listen to this song regularly. I absolutely love it. The guitar is great. The lyrics are great. Everything about it is great. It's great. You listen to it, you'll feel great too. Tyler Bryant and the Shakedown. And now this catalog is pretty diverse too. it's not like everything is not like On to the Next, but they've got a lot of cool tracks. They've been out with a lot of major bands. Number 3, band recently released their debut album. It's the Georgia Thunderbolts. My favorite track on that album is Lend a Hand, and they're all really good, but Lend a Hand to me kind of shines above the rest. The Georgia Thunderbolts, I believe my buddy Blake Dees turned me on to them. I'm almost positive that's the case. Blake Dees, I think Blake and those guys went out and did some shows with them, and he goes, dude, you got to listen to these guys. And he was absolutely right. I love them. Absolutely love them. But Lend a Hand is the way to go. Number 2, a band that has recently made my radar. I missed them, and a good friend of mine sent this to me and said, Steve, these guys are on their way to being an next Leonard Skinner. I don't know that I agree with that. I think that's probably a little bit unfair. But it's Them Dirty Roses. I love these guys, man. And it's one of those things, too, like they've got a song for every mood. But at the heart of it, they're kind of a blues band, per se. But we're going to go with Whiskey in My Cup. I don't drink anymore. They have another song called Cocaine and Whiskey that's very clever. Very clever. But we're not going to advocate cocaine on the show. But it's Whiskey in My Cup. It's a great track. It's got a good vibe to it. Be sure and check that out. Number 1, now this may not be my favorite song from this band, but I thought you may be more inclined to listen to this. This band is absolutely on their way. I haven't seen them live yet. I plan to. I'd like to get out and see all these bands live. You know, I go to a lot of shows. I have a lot of time to myself. When I get a chance to get loose, I like to go to shows. I love live music. But it's a band called the Delta Sons out of Nashville. They have a song called Mississippi. Now, the vocal in the earlier part of the song, I'll be honest with you, it's not great. It's good, it's not great. When the band kind of kicks up, it's a wonderful track. But the Delta Sons, there is just something about them. They have something. Yeah, it's difficult to really describe. I don't know if they just have the blues in their soul or whatever, but they're a great band. I think you'll dig them. But the new blood of Southern rock represented today on our top 10 list. Four-Way Stop, Marcus King Band, Caleb Johnson, Robert John and the Wreck, Magnolia Bayou, Bishop Gunn, Tyler Bryant, The Shakedown, Georgia Thunderbolts, Them Dirty Roses, and the Delta Sons. I think there are a lot of people that maybe have been waiting for their list. This is it. If you like Southern rock, oh, well, Steve, I like Blackfoot. Oh, well, this is for you. I like Leonard Skinner. This is for you. I like Black Song Cherry. This is for you. Love these guys, man. And again, some of these bands won't make it. It's so tough to make it. But a lot of these bands will. It's kind of the new blood, the new generation of Southern rock. So let's celebrate that today. Be sure and listen, let me know. Some of you are I have so many people that hit me up and say, Steve, I'd never really listened to this band or I only knew this song. And I dig this list. And thanks for turning me on to that. There are other people who are like, hey, Steve, I don't like top 10 lists. And you know what? You can get glad in the same pair of pants you got Matt in. But this is my gift to you. Try to share some cool music here. And, whether you like it or whether you don't, it's a feature that's done really well for us. But I think this is a list that a lot of people have been kind of maybe didn't know they were waiting for this, but I think when you listen to this, it's going to open your eyes to some new music that I think you're going to absolutely love. So there you go. If you have ideas for the top 10 list, reach out and let me know. Best way to do that is to go through Roy. Hit Roy up on Twitter at Dogmatic67, DAWGMATIC67. You can find our great list over on Spotify too. How about that? Just go to Spotify, boom, plug it on. If you're like me sometimes too, when I'm making these long trips, I kind of run out of stuff to listen to. I mean, it's like, how many times have I listened to this album? I want something fresh. I'll put it on a podcast or whatever. And every so often, I'll run across a list. Like there'll be some obscure list of some, something that I'm unfamiliar with, and I'll put it on. And I find these new bands for you and for me. And there's sometimes I'll go through and I'm like, oh, what was that great song from this band? And I'll find that then what happens, Apple Music will kind of advance you to something in the same genre. I kind of dig that too. Speaking of that, one of my favorite songs right now, you're going to laugh. You've probably never heard this song. It absolutely rocks, man. It's a song called Bloodsucker by a band called Pink Cream 69. Have never heard those guys in my life. And I was listening to House of Lords. It was founded by Mississippi's own Greg Giuffria, a product of the Gene Simmons Revolution from Kiss. Gene kind of promoted that band early on, produced their first album. But all of a sudden, Apple Music advances the song, and all of a sudden I start hearing this guitar, and I'm like, hey, this is pretty good. Who is this? And then the vocal comes in, and I'm like, holy smokes. I listened to that song this morning as I was getting ready. It's Bloodsucker by Pink Cream 69. What a crazy name for a band, right? And so I asked some of my friends at Lillian Axe if they'd heard of these guys. Not only had they heard of them, Pink Cream 69 has opened shows for Lillian Axe. How crazy is that? Nuts. Great track. Maybe check that one out. Bloodsucker by Pink Cream 69. And somebody's going to be like, Steve, this is a joke, right? No, it's not. These guys are a serious rock band. I was thinking they were like Steel Panther or something. They're legit. And while I'm talking about that, go and listen to that House of Lords album too. Love that. House of Lords, man. Those guys are great. Great. The song that led me to Bloodsucker is a song called Rock Bottom from House of Lords. If you don't know it, you certainly should. But that's the top 10 list for today. Thanks to Roy, as always, for putting all these lists together for us. Roy gets paid nothing to do this. He just does it because he enjoys the top 10 list and thinks many of you do as well, so he makes it more convenient and easy for you guys to find that music. You don't have to go write it down or remember anything. Roy's got you covered. All right, next segment of the show brought to you by Campus Bookmart, a Starkvillian institution. I love Campus Bookmart. You will too. You probably are already raving fans of Campus Bookmart. Next time you're in town, go by and check them out. The Bully Shop, completely renovated. The greatest selection of Mississippi State merchandise in the universe. Doing a great job for a great fan base. They'll treat you like family because in their minds you are family. Most of the employees there, Mississippi State people. They know what you like. They know what you want. You like that new script, Mississippi State branding? They've got a fine selection of that merchandise, too. Go by and check it out. If you can't make it to town, I encourage you to visit them on the World Wide Web, courtesy of Al Gore's Internet, at campusbookmart.net. And by being a loyal Boneyard listener, we'll give you a phrase that pays. And that is BSR, which stands for Beautiful Steve Robertson. That gets you free shipping on all orders over $50. Any order less than $50, absolutely incomplete. Again, that's campusbookmart.net, promo code BSR. All right, let's take a look at the stats. Your SEC stats report. Will Rogers leads the SEC and the nation in passing, 2,110 yards. Stetson Bennett from Georgia is second with 1,744. So pretty sizable lead there for Will. We'll see what happens this weekend with Georgia and Vanderbilt. But I think it's going to be difficult for Stetson to catch Will. Way back in third is Handon Hooker, who is nearly 700 yards behind Will Rogers at 14:32. Will Levis from Kentucky, 14:05. Of course, that'll be a big ball game this weekend against a pretty good secondary. Ole Miss's Jackson Dart, 13:58. Spencer Radler from South Carolina. I don't know if he's performed up to expectations or not. He leads the SEC in interceptions thrown with 8. But 1,298 yards, 65.8% completion percentage. Brady Cook from Missouri is 7th with 1,217. Jaden Daniels from LSU, 8th. Bryce Young, 1,202 yards. Did you expect to see that? Yeah, he missed a game and a half. That's hurt the numbers. And maybe that impacts the all-SEC list at the end of the year. Still a lot to go. But you look at it, you say, well, he's only 20 yards ahead of Anthony Richardson. Former Heisman candidate Anthony Richardson. His Heisman candidacy lasted about 15 minutes. KJ Jefferson, 1096. Robbie Ashford, the new starter at Georgia, 874. A completion percentage for him of 47.97%. A.J. Swan from Vanderbilt, the second quarterback there, 848. Then Haynes King, 763. A&M quarterback play has been a real issue for them. A completion percentage, of course, that's always interesting. Will Rogers leads the SEC, 71.63 completion percentage. Handon Hooker at 70%. That's outstanding. Stetson Bennett, 3rd. Will Levis is 4. Jaden Daniels is 5. Bryce Young is 6. KJ 7. Spencer Radler 8. Yards per passing attempt. This is where people always talk about Will Rogers. Will is 10th, 7.48 yards per passing attempt. Handon Hooker, though, leading the conference with 10.23 yards. Will Levis just under 10. So they're throwing the ball down the field a little bit. And the way that I look at that, the more Kentucky throws it, the better it is for us because we're going to catch some of those. Passing touchdowns thrown, Will Rogers leads the SEC, 22 passing touchdowns. Bryce Young down there in second at 14. Will Levis with 12, Handon Hooker with 10, and nobody else in double digits. Interceptions, this is what's always interesting to me. I mentioned Spencer Radler with 8. Anthony Richardson has 7. Brady Cook from Missouri with 6. Haynes King, despite playing more of a limited role there because, Max Johnson started a couple games, 5 interceptions for them. And then Jackson Dart from Ole Miss there at 5. Levis at 4. Will Rogers 6th. He and Bryce Young and Robbie Ashford all tied with 3. Sacks allowed, quarterbacks being sacked. Some of this is on the quarterback, but most of it is on the offensive line. You'd probably be surprised to know this because we had so much trouble with this guy. Jaden Daniels actually has been sacked more than any quarterback in the Southeastern Conference with 20. And then Will Levis, 19. So 6 sacks last week against the backup, but 25 sacks as a whole. I shared with you guys on Wednesday, 128th in the country in sacks allowed is Kentucky. Spencer Radler, 12 sacks, tied with Brady Cook. Will Rogers is down there with 8. Will Rogers, Handon Hooker, KJ Jefferson, Robbie Ashford, all those guys more mobile than Will Rogers. But 8 sacks, and State hadn't had any in 2 weeks. Be nice to keep that streak going for another week. Now, quarterback rating, a lot goes into this, but Handon Hooker is rated the top-rated quarterback in the Southeastern Conference. Just behind him is Will Levis, 174.91 for Levis. Bryce Young, 172. KJ is 4th. Will Rogers is 5th with a QBR of 158.10. And, of course, you say, well, Steve, how does that calculate? Well, the difference is the yards per attempt. They're throwing the ball down the field with greater regularity. So, as a result, their QBR is up. Even though Will has more yards, Will also has more attempts, more completions, everything else. But great job by Will Rogers so far. Dead last in QBR in the league is Robbie Ashford from Auburn. What's interesting, Anthony Richardson held that mark for a while, but now Haynes King and Robbie Ashford beneath them. It's interesting, too, the more mobile quarterbacks, a lot of those guys maybe not doing quite as well. Spencer Radler, Brady Cook, Jaden Daniels, even Stetson Bennett. His QBR is not exactly stellar, and he is a very athletic quarterback. And he's 8th in the league. That's your passing numbers. Let's look at the rushing stuff. Now, we're not going to lead these categories anymore. However, Dylan Johnson doing a good job for Mississippi State. Woody Marks is as well, but we're not going to have the numbers that perhaps some other people are. But Dylan Johnson in the top 10, number 8 most successful rusher in the conference, 402 yards through 6 games for him. I don't think he gets the 1,000-yard mark because we're just not going to, ride one running back. But Raheem Sanders from Arkansas, even though he didn't get 100 yards last week, he still leads the league and has over a 100-yard lead over the number 2 guy, who is freshman Quinshon Judkins from Ole Miss, who has got 581. Jameer Gibbs from Alabama has emerged as their bell cow in the running game, 532. Devin Achane, we've seen him, 528 yards. So State's seen 2 of the top 4, and we'll see the other 2 before the schedule is over. Ray Davis from Vanderbilt is 5th in the league. Zach Evans, Ole Miss with 2 in the top 6. Zach Evans, 469. And then Marshawn Lloyd from South Carolina is 7. Then Dylan Johnson. Nathan Pete from Missouri. Montrell Johnson from Florida. If you had a Mississippi State running back ahead of a Florida running back, considering the Billy Napier scheme, you've won Bulldog bingo. Jaden Daniels, 11th. Tank Bigsby, who I think is underutilized at Auburn, and there's not a lot of pieces around him, just 345 yards. Tank was a preseason All-SEC selection. He's really going to have to work hard, to get up into the top 10. You begin to kind of do the math on that through 6 games. You begin to think, we're at the halfway point for most teams. Chances of him even getting 800 yards seems to be somewhat remote. All right, rushing touchdowns. Quinshon Judkins from Ole Miss, 8. That's the thing, too. You begin to look at Judkins and you begin to think, and I know some people out there will look at him and say, well, he's a freshman. He'll make freshman All-SEC. Based on the numbers at this point, how do you not have him as maybe your second team or your second running back in the All-SEC? And so good job by Ole Miss for identifying a kid that could come in and play early and do a good job. Marshawn Lloyd has 7 for South Carolina. Jamari Small from Tennessee, who was outstanding last week against LSU, with 6. Zach Evans with 6 also for Ole Miss. And then Jacobius Marks with 5, which makes him 4th in the SEC. Dylan Johnson's carried a lot of mail, but only has 3 touchdowns for Mississippi State on the ground. Look at the receiving numbers. This is interesting. Jonathan Mingo from Ole Miss had a huge game last week, set an Ole Miss school record for single-game receiving yards. Jumps to first in the conference at 507 yards. Now, Jonathan Mingo, while he has been hurt most of his career, it's just kind of been JAG-Corps for them, just another guy. Showed last weekend he could be a real weapon. Dominique Lovett from Missouri, is second, just behind Mingo by 8 yards. Will Shepard from Vanderbilt, 452. Tavion Robinson, who is kind of the straw that stirs the drink in the passing game for Kentucky, 25 catches for 392 yards. Jalen Hyatt from Tennessee, then Jaden McGowan. I have to go all the way down to Ra Thomas at 10, 368. He's just behind former Bulldog commitment Malik Neighbors, who was 9. But 368 yards. Now receptions, this is where things change a good bit here. Will Shepard from Vandy, who maybe needs to get in the portal, 35 receptions for him. Dominique Lovett from Missouri with 31. Jaden McGowan, 29 for Vanderbilt. Malik Neighbors. It's like salt in the wound, isn't it? 4th in the conference with 28 receptions. Caleb Ducking tied with him at 28. That's your highest rated Bulldog. But then you've got 3 Bulldogs basically within the top 5 totals. Rufus Harvey and Dylan Johnson both with 27. That'll get the job done, right? Spread the ball around like that. And Rufus Harvey, I'm happy to say that I was wrong about him. I worried about his size, but he has been outstanding for Mississippi State. The next Bulldog on the list, Jacobius Marks, down there with 23 at 8. I think you're going to see some Bulldogs have a lot of receptions this weekend. Ra Thomas with 21 is the 10th highest total. 11th is Tulu Griffin there with 20. So a lot of Bulldogs with 20-plus catches. Receiving touchdowns, Will Shepard from Vanderbilt with a 1-touchdown lead on Caleb Ducking. Will Shepard, they're on a great player on a bad team. That guy's leading the conference in a lot of receiving statistical categories, and they're going to go 3-9. Caleb Ducking, I would like to say that he emerged out of nowhere, but he really didn't. We talked about him a lot in fall camp. 7 touchdowns for him. He's probably a guy that a lot of people didn't know about. He redshirted his first year. He played behind Mekhi Polk last year. Finally getting his chance to shine, taking full advantage. Jalen Hyatt from Tennessee has 5. Treshaun Holder from Alabama with 4. And then Austin Williams from Mississippi State is 5th, tied for 5th with 3. And Austin Williams, just 12 receptions on the year. That's a bit of a surprise there. But tied with a host of players there with 3, including Ra Thomas, Jaden Walley, Jonathan Mingo, Jeray Jenkins. You don't see Keyshawn Butte's name mentioned much, do you? That's interesting. It is to me. Should be the money year for him. It hasn't been. Let's look at some kicking numbers, too, because sometimes we think it only happens to us. It's tough to find good help these days. You see it all over. A lot of businesses are hiring. You can't pass through town without seeing a help wanted sign somewhere around. And here's the issue. Any potential hire that you make could potentially be a high-stakes gamble for your business. You want to be 100% certain you have access to the best qualified candidates available. That's why you have to check out our friends at LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs helps find the right people for your team faster and for free. How about that? And how many times have you gone through a hiring process where you have to look through dozens and dozens of resumes and applications only to find out you don't have a viable candidate? Here's the thing. You can post your job for free on LinkedIn Jobs. Very easy to do. You add your job in the purple hashtag hiring frame to your LinkedIn profile to help spread the word that you're hiring. Simple tools like screening questions make it easy to focus on candidates with just the right skills and experience so you can quickly prioritize who you'd like to interview and ultimately hire. The money quarter is coming. You need to be uniform and you need to be strong in your message by having the most qualified team work for you. It's why small businesses rate LinkedIn Jobs #1 in delivering quality hires versus leading competitions. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster than ever. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/boneyard. That's linkedin.com/boneyard to post your job for free. Some terms and conditions may apply. What are you waiting for? Get after it today. Leading kicker in the conference is Jack. I know I'm going to mess this up. Podlesny? I'm sorry, Jack. But he's 12-14 on the year. Harrison Mevis from Missouri, 11-14. Chase McGrath, 8-10. Matt Ruffalo from Kentucky, 7-10. You get down to Ben Rabin, who's 4-6. We don't attempt many field goals, but just about everybody has a miss, with the exception of Mitch Jeter from South Carolina. You look at field goal percentage here. You think it only happens to us, because we're only acutely aware of what goes on with us. But Georgia's missed a couple. Tennessee's missed a couple. Missouri's missed 3. I mean, you run all the way down the list. Everybody's missed some. We've only missed a couple, too. But reality of it is we got to get it figured out. What's interesting, too, about Harrison Mevis, we talked about him earlier. This guy is outstanding, though, from distance. 4 converted field goals, 40-49, and then 3 from 50+. Man, you talk about a weapon. A guy, when you have a drive bogged down, that can make some plays for you. That's outstanding. All right, punting. State situationally has been very, very good in punting. But we don't punt an awful lot, so we're not going to do an awful lot when it comes to punting numbers. Of course, Vanderbilt has the most punting yardage at 1421, and then Texas A&M at 1245. We don't have a guy on the top 10 in that respect. Now, when you get into average yards, game yards divided by punts, Jay Bramlett from LSU leads the SEC 46.04. Kentucky's Colin Godfellow is 9th at 41.55. So could be an issue in the ballgame. Returning, this is where Mississippi State has some advantages. Devin Achane still leads the SEC with 287 returning yards. However, Tulu Griffin is just now 7 behind him. They both have 9 kick returns. The difference is that Achane had the long return for 95 yards, the one for a touchdown. If you erase his longest return and Tulu's longest return, then Tulu is leading. So he's kind of riding that. So the average return is 31.89 yards for Achane, just 31.11 for Tulu Griffin. He will get some opportunities this weekend. My hope is Kentucky doesn't kick off an awful lot, but if they do, I think you have a chance to see Tulu break one this week. That'd be amazing. Absolutely amazing. Punt return, which is, I think Xavier Thomas, again, is probably just one block away from breaking one. He is 4th in the SEC. 4th in the SEC in punt returns with 9. You look at punt return yards, Xavier is 6th with 96, but yards per return, 5th in the SEC, and just basically one return away from creeping into the top 3. Kool-Aid McKinstry from Alabama leads the SEC with 16.79 yards per return. That's a nice weapon there. Josh Vann from South Carolina at 13.75. Then there's Bryce Stevens from Arkansas, Ladd McConkey from Georgia, and then Xavier Thomas, 10.67. Very close to moving into the top 4 and potentially the top 3. Not been a lot of punt returns for touchdowns this year within the conference. We always think we're just one away. There's only been one punt return for touchdown in the SEC this year, and that was Bryce Stevens from Arkansas. And that was in that Missouri State game. When's the last time we could say that halfway through the year, you only got one punt return for touchdown? That's always interesting to me. On the kicking side, there's only been one kickoff return for touchdown. That's Devin Achane. What's happening with special teams in the SEC? You're not seeing those big plays. Coverage units, obviously, doing a pretty good job in that respect. Maybe Mississippi State gets on that chart this week. That's certainly the hope. Let's look at the defensive numbers here before we move forward. Still leading the SEC in tackles, Anthony Orjai from Vanderbilt with 61. Now, just behind him are two guys that had really big ball games last weekend against Mississippi State. Bumper Poole with 60, and then Drew Sanders with 59. The top-rated Bulldog is Jet Johnson with 57. 57 tackles. But, what's interesting, Jet doesn't have a sack this year. Maybe it's how we're using him. We're sending Buki Watson a lot more on the blitz, but Jet, 57 tackles, so he is 4 away from the lead. With Kentucky being kind of a run-first, play-action, pass offense, you could see Jet put together a big game here. But those Arkansas linebackers, say what you want to about that defense. Those backers are making plays. And Bumper Poole now more tackles than anybody in the history of the Arkansas program. Got to go a little bit farther down to number 9, DeAndre Square in Kentucky and Buki Watson, along with Chris Russell from A&M, Owen Papoa from Auburn, and Jardine Gilbert from A&M, all with 41. And so Buki, despite the fact that he basically missed a full game, is right there in the top 10. You could see him make a nice run this week too and possibly move up safely into the top 6 or 7. But linebackers, making plays for sure for the Bulldogs. Former Bulldog lean Edgerrin Cooper for A&M's been outstanding too. 37 tackles on the year. DeCamerion Richardson, one of the top defensive backs in the conference when it comes to tackles. He's got 37 as well. I mean, you start running through the list here. There's just not a lot of DBs that are having the same level of production that DCAM is. And that was one thing we worried about is with Martin Emerson moving on, how would we be at the spot opposite Emmanuel Forbes? So far, we've been really good, if not better, dare I say it. And Martin Emerson was outstanding, which I think speaks well of the year that DCAM is having. Jalen Green down at 21 with 29 tackles, kind of quietly having a really good year for Mississippi State. Good friend of mine kind of mentioned that Jalen hadn't had his impact play the last couple of weeks. And early in the season he was. I think a lot of people were kind of avoiding him a little bit, but I think you could see him maybe have an impact play this weekend against Kentucky. All right, let's look at sack leaders. Drew Sanders leads the SEC from Arkansas with 7. Will Anderson with 5. You'd expect that. Jordan Dominique from Arkansas with 5. Amari Burney from Florida with 4. He's tied with Derek Hall from Auburn. Then Ojulari from LSU, who is an absolute monster. Missed some time earlier this year. He has 4 sacks. Byron Young at Tennessee with 4. And then there's Buki Watson with 3 from Mississippi State. And again, he's a game down on most of his competition there. But 3 sacks on the season. Leads Mississippi State. Randy Charlton has a couple for State. Nathan Pickering has 2 for State. Colin Duncan has 2 for State. Bringing him on that safety blitz, especially on the front side, has been very successful. Tyrus Wheat with a couple. J.P. Purvis in very limited action has a couple. So, we're getting to the quarterback and the pressure's coming from everywhere. Pass is defended. And you would think that a lot of these people that we play against, their numbers would be up there. The number 1 defensive back on this list, Carrington Valentine from Kentucky. He has 1 pick on the year, but 7 passes defended. It'll be interesting to see how we attack him. Kool-Aid McKinstry also with 7 from Alabama. Hudson Clark from Arkansas with 7. No picks for him. Ole Miss's DeAndre Prince, a guy that left and came back, has 6, having a good season for sure. Emmanuel Forbes tied for second with 6, along with Prince. Chris Abrams-Drain, a guy that Mississippi State was one of his first offers. He went to LSU, transferred to Missouri. He's got 5. You get a little bit deeper on the list here. DJ James, former Bulldog commitment, that signed with Oregon, transferred to Auburn. He has 5 as well. So some familiar names on this list, to say the least. Colin Duncan from Mississippi State with 3. DeCamerion Richardson also with 3. Jalen Green with a couple. And again, pretty good play in the secondary for the Bulldogs. Interceptions. This is a statistic that favors Mississippi State. Emmanuel Forbes leads the SEC with 4 interceptions, so 6 passes defended and 4 interceptions. Of course, he took 1 back for a touchdown. Arkansas's Dwight McLaughlin with 3 did not have 1 against Mississippi State. You have to get down the list to find the next guy. Of course, Jalen Green has got one, and then Sean Preston, Nathaniel Watson, all with one there. But again, Emmanuel Forbes with 4. Jackie Matthews also had a big one last week for State. So 4 picks. So we're leading the SEC, and you look at the year that Emmanuel Forbes is having. 17 total tackles, and that's what everybody's staying away from him, but 6 passes defended, 4 interceptions, having an all-SEC caliber year. And you throw in the play that he's made on special teams, you begin to realize this guy's a real dude. Is he back next year? I don't expect it. But, you never know. We'll see. But I think you begin to look at this and see, you know what, Emmanuel Forbes has taken all of this disrespect and kind of flipped it around and made it a motivating factor for him, having a big year. Need him to have a big ball game this weekend against the University of Kentucky. I think everybody would probably agree with that. We need to have good play in the secondary. And I think the key to that, too, we'll talk about this in the next segment of the show, is going to be stopping the run. You got to stop the run, which kind of in many ways eliminates play action. Your safeties aren't quite so conflicted when they don't have to honor the run. If you can control that with your front 6, it changes things dramatically. Let's take a quick look at the standings, too, before we get into our final thoughts about the ballgame. Georgia 3-0 in the SEC East, 6-0 overall. No surprise there. Tennessee 2-0 and 5-0 overall. And then everybody else has at least a loss or 2. Florida 1-2 in the league, 4-2 overall. Kentucky 1-2 in the league, 4-2 overall. South Carolina 1-2 in the league, 4-2 overall. So a little bit of a glut there in the middle. Missouri is 0-3 and 2-4 overall. Vanderbilt 0-2 and 3-3 overall. You begin to look at this Georgia team, and it's really, you begin to ask yourself, short of them stubbing their foot against Tennessee, you feel like they could wrap up the East fairly early in the season. I think Tennessee is a team that will drop this ball game to Alabama, and I don't think they can beat Georgia. So that would give Georgia at least a 2-game lead on everybody within the league, and you just play a conference game. So they could wrap this thing up here. Here in a few weeks. SEC West, Alabama, of course, first, 3-0, 6-0 overall. Ole Miss, I guess a half game back with a 2-0 record in the league and 6-0 overall. Things are about to change for Ole Miss. They've played the easy part of their schedule. A lot of toss-up games coming ahead. It's going to be interesting to see how Ole Miss plays in those games that are a little more tightly contested. LSU 2-1 in the conference and 4-2 overall, and I don't know. So Mississippi State is 2-1 and then 5-1 overall. I guess they did that alphabetically. Auburn is 1-2 and then 3-3. A&M 1-2 and 3-3, and Arkansas 1-3 and 3-3. If you had Arkansas with 3 conference losses at this point in the schedule, you probably will have won something. But 3 conference losses. And you begin to look at the rest of that schedule, you begin to realize Arkansas, their season is on the brink. There's no question about that. Auburn, of course, those 2 teams will eventually play. But I look at this pecking order, and so many people had State pick 6th in the West. Well, right now you hold the tiebreaker over A&M and Arkansas. And you've got the better record. And so when you start thinking about the ball pecking order, I think those wins are going to prove to be very significant for Mississippi State. Another interesting thing I like about this this standings chart is it gives you points for and points against. Mississippi State is allowed 126 points this year, which is a little more than some of our SEC West competition. State has scored 231 points, which is third in the SEC West. Ole Miss has scored 238. And Alabama scored 266. Of course, State hadn't had the benefit of the FCS game yet. But Alabama outscoring people rather significantly, almost 200 points on the season. On the eastern side of things, Georgia scored 237, which, of course, you'd expect. Tennessee, 234. This Tennessee team can score. But the points against for Tennessee is just 89. And so you begin to pair this up with this Alabama game, and you can see why so many people expect it to be close. Tennessee is much improved. I just go back to the fact Alabama has been in this moment so many times. Kentucky, Mississippi State's opponent, has scored 158 points this year, allowed 98. That's probably as close as you get without having, a 500 or worse record. Arkansas has actually allowed more points than they've scored. They've allowed 193 and scored just 177. A&M only 16 points to the good. Auburn has allowed 150 and scored just 122. So it's interesting to see so many teams who have played the bulk of their non-conference schedule to be outscored. That doesn't really bode well for the rest of the year. Vanderbilt leads the SEC with 221 points allowed. That's no surprise there. But Missouri right there at 151, 148. It's all very interesting to me. Because you start looking at this stuff and begin to wonder, what's really the deal with all of this, with scoring. It's an important part of things. Because the team that scores the most points wins the game, right? It kind of goes without saying. But I think that's important to kind of get. And looking, before we move on from this, total offensive numbers. Mississippi State 5th in the SEC in total offense with 2,768 yards. Kentucky, this week's opponent, 2,138 yards. They are 13th in offense in the Southeastern Conference. And they really haven't played a defense quite like Mississippi State. And again, we got to stop the run. But when you start adding up, yards per game here, Tennessee first in the conference at 547, but State 461, Kentucky 13th at 356. Something else that kind of favors Mississippi State. Of course, State's going to lead in passing. You'd expect that. But Kentucky right there too at 4, almost 600 yards behind Mississippi State. We talk about the total points category. When you mesh everybody together, State has scored the 5th most points in the conference at 231. Kentucky 11th with 158. The team that scored the fewest, of course, is Auburn. And that's the thing, too. You bring in Brian Harsin and you think he's an offensive-minded coach, and now we can't score. Now, granted, they were hurt some by the portal. Then there's Jimbo Fisher, the quarterback whisperer, 13th in the league at 129 points. Tough to win games when you can't score. Pretty remarkable. And you look at the teams that are playing exceptionally well, everybody's averaging right around 40 points, including Mississippi State, 38.5 points a game. Kentucky averaging 26.33. And again, I would venture to say that we've played better competition than they've had. I think that's fair to say. And at the end of the day, we got to go up there and play. We got to go play. All right, final segment of the show, as we talk a little bit more about the matchup, is brought to you by Portico. My friend Brooks Bryan, Mississippi State's friend, your friend, the world's friend, Brooks Bryan, part of a great group of developers bringing this wonderful residential development to Starkville. It's Portico. I've told you guys before, if I was moving to Starkville now, Portico's where I'd move. If you're considering to move to Starkville, and you certainly should, Brooks is the guy to call. Let me give you his number, 601-416-8075. Again, that's 601-416-8075. Portico, very conveniently located for Bulldog fans. You turn off of 82 onto 12. The very first right is Pat Station Road. You've passed it a million times going to campus, and you always wondered, well, I wonder where that goes. It goes to your new place. You take that right on Pat Station Road. You go through the four-way stop, and boom, there's Portico right to the right. Go by and check it out next time you're in town. You don't need a real estate agent. Just take a self-guided tour through the neighborhood. And maybe you're looking for a ballgame weekend retreat. Maybe it's your second home. Maybe it's your primary residence, future retirement home. I don't know. But they've got a plan for you. You could start with a 2-bedroom, 2-bath, go all the way up to a 4-bedroom, 4-bath. You'll be glad you did, because all of your family is going to want to stop and see you on the way to the game. And maybe you tailgate from home, right? Instead of going to campus, it's, hey, let's just tailgate right here in the backyard. And then we'll all get in the car and go to the ball game and come back. You can have your little man cave set up and all that good stuff. You can grill. Maybe that's what you want to do. If I was moving to Starkville, I'd move to Portico. No doubt about it. And you should. Brooks' phone number one more time, 601-416-8075. Be sure and check it out. A lot of Bulldogs involved with that project, as you would expect. Okay, I did a bit of a deep dive into Mississippi State and Kentucky last year. Sat down, watched the game again, charted every single play, wrote an article about it, and looking for my notes right here as I talk to you guys. I'm not the most organized person, you may have guessed. But Mississippi State ran through these numbers, 37 first down plays. 37. Now, that's given and earned, right? Because you get a first down when you get to football, right? So given and earned. And of those 37 first down plays, State gained ground on 32 of them. So you're winning on first down. The 5 that didn't was an incompletion. Think about that for a second. We had one incompletion on first down the entire game against Kentucky in 2021. One. We had one loss of 2 yards and 2 losses of 1 yard, and then we had a run for no gain. So in the end of those 37 first down plays, we only lost yardage on 3 of them. We only got behind the chains 3 times, other than a couple penalties. My point is, State was winning on first down. When you win on first down, you get into second, medium, second, manageable. It opens up the playbook for you a little bit because you can call whatever you want to on second down, especially when you get into maybe a second short. You can take a shot down the field, whatever, because you feel like you can pick it up on third down. It's important for State to win on first down. Now, in those first 2 drives last year, and if you read the article, you know this. State won on first down, and then the 2 times that Kentucky sacked us, and they only got us twice, both of those came on second downs on the very first 2 drives in the first quarter for Mississippi State. And then that ultimately gets us in third long. We didn't convert and had the punt. Looking at Kentucky's tendencies, they enjoy the second down blitz. And how many people do you see, well, we're just going to wait and bring pressure on third down? Well, they do. But they were getting at us on second down. And I think that's a byproduct of winning on first down. And again, that's Mark Stoops, one of the best defensive minds in college football, certainly in the Southeastern Conference. I think everybody kind of respects him for that. They're going to bring some pressure. And a lot of people had said, well, but Steve, they sat and dropped 8 the whole night. They didn't, actually. They didn't. Let's go back to that very first scoring drive for Mississippi State. State gets down 10-0 in this ball game. We come back and make it a 10-7 game. Now, in that particular drive, Kentucky was basically a drop 8. They brought some occasional pressure, but not much. And I've got the numbers in front of me here. Drop 8, they showed 4, and then dropped 8. Drop 8, showed 4, dropped 8. Drop 8, 4-man front on a third down, third and short play. We convert. Then they go back to drop 8. And then on second down, they showed 4, but only brought 3. And there's a pass interference call. And then it's a drop 8 again. We go down and score. So basically, it's a drop 8 the entire drive, except on third and short, and they bring in a 4th defensive lineman. Now, a lot of times in these Kentucky drives, too, they work with 2 down linemen. They showed a 3-man front, but only had 2 guys down in a 4-point stance. They would stand up an edge rusher out there. Now, that works really well against a zone read as long as you pick the right side. But I think that's one of the reasons State elected to run football so much. State ran the football a season-high 35 times in the game. You take what the defense gives you. Now, on this second scoring drive for State, when State took a 14-10 lead, this is what I thought was interesting. Because, again, I was under the misconception they would drop 8 the whole ballgame. They absolutely were not drop 8 the whole ballgame. They come out on first down, and it is a drop 8. And then it's 4-man front, and then they drop 8 again, and then it's a 4-man front, and they bring pressure. Then on second down, they bring pressure. Then it's drop 8, then it's 4-man front, 4-man front, 4-man front. They bring pressure. Showed 3, brought 4. Showed 3, brought 4. Showed 4, brought 5. So it's like, the drive we go down and score, it's like, okay, we're just going to sit back in coverage and let Mississippi State implode. We're going to make them drive the length of the field. Well, then the second drive, they're like, okay, well, we can't just let Will Rogers sit back there and pick us apart. Let's bring pressure. On this drive, we never faced a third down. The longest down and distance we had after a first down was 2nd and 3. And on that particular play, the 2nd and 3, they bring 5. Again, a second down pressure. And Will Rogers makes a quick throw out to Scooby Ford, who makes a great catch to move the chains. And then from there, State goes in and scores, and it's 14-10. Now, later in the ball game, especially in the second half, Kentucky brought more pressure. That's the thing. But, well, I expect a lot of pressure. Guys, they pressured a lot last year. We just handled it. You look up and say, well, there was 2 sacks. They didn't stop blitzing. We were just able to pick it up and protect. Now, let's talk about weather a little bit. That's a concern, right? Maybe not the way that it ordinarily would be, but usually the teams that run the football kind of do better in the weather. But, we have played in some rain, even with the air raid, and been okay. But, if we get into a torrential downpour, that could be a problem. The best part of that is it is a turf field. It's a turf field in Lexington. That's important to kind of understand, too. Now, looking at the radar now, or looking at the forecast, it's actually improved. Looks like we may be okay weather-wise. But in the event that there is some moisture in the air, maybe a storm comes up late. I don't know the weather in Kentucky, and it's so unpredictable down here in the South. If there is some rain, it's not the issue that it would be maybe on a grass field because of the fact those turf fields drain so well. Maybe a little bit slick. I asked Jason Washington this week, do you do anything different with footwear when you're playing on turf? He goes, man, guys, just go play. And the turf today is basically so much better than what we all grew up watching and playing on. You don't need additional footwear. You need to go change things. And you start changing things, you get guys off their game a little bit anyway. But the reality of it is that the weather should be okay. And again, even if it is a little moisture, it's going to be fine. It shouldn't slow us down. There's a lot of times, too, and I want to talk about this, and again, I get people sometimes, well, Steve, come on. We got some fans out there that's like we're just expecting us to lose all the time. And I don't understand it. We're a good football team. Kentucky, I think, is an average football team. And people say, well, Steve, you're a Kentucky hater. I'm not a Kentucky hater. I'm a hater of these media folks that continue to prop them up every year. And these people talking about they're going to win the East this year. Give me a break. You got the defending national champions in the same division. They return a lot, especially on offense. So, no, you're not going to do that. Not to mention Kentucky lost a lot last year from last year's roster. Yes, they returned Will Levis, and that's a guy, too, that I think is a little bit overvalued. But you know what? I don't rank NFL quarterbacks. But we are the better team. If we lose this football game, it's not a toss-up. It's an upset. State is favored in the game. State is ranked higher in the polls. State has the better record. State wore this team out last year. Now, the flip side of that is, State also forced 4 turnovers last year. You're not going to be able to depend on that. Now, turnovers are part of the game of football. You don't believe me? Go back and look at that 2020 game when we got beat, 24-2. Didn't score a single offensive point for the first time in Mike Leach's career. So Kentucky didn't get any turnovers last year. They lost. We committed 6 the year before we lost. So turnovers are part of the game. We've got to do a good job managing the game and keeping the football. We go up there and get loose and fast with the football, put the ball on the turf, we're going to lose. We'll go ahead and prepare you for that. We go over there and lose turnover battle, we're going to lose the ball game. But you can't expect to be able to get 3 or 4 turnovers a game. It's not going to happen. Now, State's done a pretty good job forcing turnovers this year. But this is a Kentucky team that's desperate in many respects. Now, one of the things that I preached as a coach, that I believe as an adult, is it doesn't matter how bad you want it if you're not good enough. That's a reality of life. And people are like, well, this Kentucky team's going to be desperate. Well, they haven't played well for 3 weeks. They had Will Levis against Northern Illinois, and they struggled to win the game. They won by 8. Wasn't a good game. They had Will Levis against Ole Miss. He didn't play well. Some of that's got to do with Ole Miss, too. You got to give Ole Miss some credit, too. Ole Miss went out there and made him uncomfortable. He turned the football over, had a couple fumbles late. And, I was pulling for Kentucky to win that game, of course. I'm a Mississippi State guy. But the reality of it is Ole Miss made winning plays. Kentucky didn't. Will Levis didn't play last week. And South Carolina, a team that's very, very average. You heard the numbers on Spencer Radler. Spencer Radler will give you the game if you let him. And Kentucky, just couldn't get it done. Mississippi State's won 3 games in a row. None of those games have been close. But we have some segment of the fan base is like, well, we're due for a loss. What kind of cockamamie stuff is that? We're due for a loss? Why aren't we due for a big season? Well, I've been a State fan a long time. Well, I have too. I've been a State fan over 50 years. I know what it was like in the 80s. But how are we ever going to break through if we don't kind of embrace where we are and the fact that even when we're having a good season that we expect failure? And, really, at the end of the day, it's like it's going to be what it's going to be. I'm just trying to enjoy the journey. And I go back to the beginning of the season. Somebody has picked us to lose every one of these games with the exception of the Bowling Green game. Whether it be somebody in the regional media, even some of our fans were seeing ghosts about Bowling Green. Oh, we're expecting them to lay down. They beat Marshall last week, and Marshall beat Notre Dame the week before. So you look at the transitive properties. Oh, well, that means we're going to get beat because we're not as good as Notre Dame. Come on, give me a break. But I go back to the Memphis game. People were like, you know what? Memphis beat us last year. They're a good team. They're going to march into Starkville and beat us. And, of course, we had that crazy rain delay, but we won that game 49-23. We won by 26 points, and they scored a garbage touchdown late. And people were like, well, here we go again. 26 points. And then it's like, well, Arizona's much improved. Arizona went out into San Diego State. They were hyped up with Snapdragon Stadium. They were debuting the brand new stadium. Everybody's excited. And Arizona went in there and smashed them. We're going to lose. We beat them 39-17. Could have and probably should have beat them worse. Then we go down to LSU and we lose. We didn't play well. The moment, I think, proved to be a little bit big for us. And I'm not going to discount the fact, Cole Kublik, of course, mentioned it about how difficult it was to go out west and come back and go back on the road the next week. Were we a little bit fatigued? Maybe. But the reality of it is we didn't play well. But maybe all those drops were a sign of team fatigue. But I still go back to the fact that we were up 13-0 in this ball game on the road in the SEC, kind of doing what we wanted to do on offense. And then we give up the 2-minute drill, let them get back in the ball game. And then even with that, heading into the fourth quarter, we had the lead on the road in Death Valley. Despite the fact we'd gone to Arizona, despite the fact that we historically don't play well in Death Valley, we had the lead through 3 quarters, and we blew it. It's not that LSU dictated terms to us. We blew it. We dropped, 7, 8 passes in that ball game. We muffed the punt. Let somebody else do that against us. We'll wear them out. You can't go to Death Valley, which I believe has the greatest home field advantage in all of college football, and make the kind of mistakes Mississippi State made and win the ball game. Just not going to happen. It's not going to happen. Even when LSU is just good. They don't have to be great or be elite. You go down there with the talent they have available, and you don't convert on third down when you're wide open. Now, there was a comment yesterday on the message board. A guy said, well, I didn't like our play calling. Guys, play calling got our guys wide open. None of those drops were contested. We just dropped the football. That's not play calling. That's player execution. And then, of course, Bowling Green finally wins the game. We beat them 45-14. Probably should have beat them worse. And so now we're 3-1, and some of our fans are thinking, okay, what do we need to do to get to the Independence Bowl? Can we eke 6 out? Texas A&M's coming in with Devin Achain. They're going to run all over us. He doesn't. They don't. We win 42-24 and really got some style points in the ball game. I think a lot of people realize Mississippi State might be for real this year. But we kind of make an excuse, like, well, Texas A&M play well. Then we get Arkansas, and of course DJ doesn't play. That's significant. I believe State would have beat them either way. I don't think we beat them 40-17. But a lot of people worried about that running game. We did a good job containing the running game. And when we beat those guys by 23 points, the same margin of victory that Alabama did. And now we get Kentucky. I don't think it's wrong to expect to win this football game. Mississippi State is the better team. Mississippi State is trending in the better direction. It's like I begin to think, like, if we were playing Mississippi State let's say we were the team that struggled against Northern Illinois, a 1-5 Northern Illinois team. Let's say we struggled against them and barely beat them. And then we lost the next two to a good Ole Miss team and a very mediocre South Carolina team. If we had lost 2 in a row and arguably should have lost 3 in a row, and we're facing a team that has scored 40 points 3 games in a row, how would we feel? Would we expect to win that game? We absolutely would not expect to win that game. But now the shoe is on the other foot. We're the team blowing people out, about to go play a team, but it's not playing well. Why should we not expect to go win this game? Oh, well, Steve, we hadn't won there the last 3 times. You know what? That's absolutely true. Has no bearing on this game. None whatsoever. I actually looked up the history of the series yesterday. Because we've taken some good teams to Kentucky and come home with a loss. Actually, we haven't. Let me see if I can find that for you real quick here. I'm not going to spend my time on this because we got to get out of here. But I ran this number yesterday, and a couple people didn't like it. Of course, I'm too positive for them. You know, I expect Mississippi State to win, and that's offensive to some people. But I'm going to continue to expect good things from Mississippi State, you know. And then my hope is even if you don't, we can all celebrate together a big Bulldog win on Saturday or Sunday. How'd that be? I'm not gonna gloat. I'm not gonna come out and say I told you so. But it's okay to believe that Mississippi State is a good football team. But here you go. Here are our losses at Kentucky. 2020, we lose. They were 5-6. We were 4-7. 2018, we lose, arguably one of the better teams that we've had in recent memory. You know what? Kentucky was 10-3 that year. We were 8-5. 2016, they're 7-6. We're 6-7. 2005, we're 3-8. They're 3-8. 2003, they're 4-8. We're 2-10. 98, we lose and win the West. They're 7-5. We're 8-5. We have an 8-4 regular season, and then we lose in the conference championship game. 96, they're 4-7, we're 5-6. 1990, we're 4-7, we're 5-6, they're 4-7. 85, we're both 5-6. 77, they're 10-1, and we're 5-6. 72, they're 3-8, we're 4-7. 58, they're 5-4, we're 3-6. 53, 7-2-1 for them, 5-2-3 for us. And 51 against Bear Bryant, they're 8-4, we're 4-5. In 1916, they're 6-2, we're 6-1-1. In 1914, they're 5-3, we're 6-2. And so basically, we have been even or worse than Kentucky, with rare exception when we've lost a game up there. When we have taken the better team up there, and this is the last point I made about that. There have just been 3 Bulldog teams to lose in Lexington and in a season with a winning record in the past 100 years of college football. So yes, we should expect to win this game. Yes, we should expect to take the next step as a program. Yes, we should expect good things to happen at Mississippi State because we deserve them. But not only that, we've got a great coach, got a great quarterback. You look at all the numbers, and of course, you know, numbers will lead you down the wrong line of thinking. But Mississippi State is playing better football than the University of Kentucky. And that's not to say that Kentucky can't win the game. They certainly can. They're playing in their own backyard. It's difficult to win on the road in the SEC, as evidenced by that trip to Baton Rouge. Much different circumstance this time. I think State has a lot more confidence in itself, has settled some things down on offense and defense. Not to mention, Kentucky's got one of the worst offensive lines in the country and a quarterback that's recovering from a turf toe injury and a dislocated finger on his non-throwing hand. You know, again, they're not going to give us a ball game. But Mississippi State is more than capable of going up there and taking this game. And that's what I expect them to do. That's it for today. If you hadn't done so, go to dogpilethebook.com and you can get a copy of Dogpile, Stark Villains, Alpha Dogs, and Flim Flam. Of course, Blooms of Oleander available through Amazon, BarnesandNoble.com, BooksMillion.com. Stark Villains gear, we've had a good run on that as of late. You can find that at StarkVillains.com. And come over to GeneSpage.com and subscribe and join our band of misfits over there as we debate the merits of the MSU logos and the value of Will Riders as a quarterback and where he ranks historically. We're excited about Mississippi State football. I'm so glad the season is here and that we're playing well. And how great would it be to come back here on Monday and talk about the 6-1 Mississippi State Bulldogs. That's what we expect to happen. It's certainly what we hope to happen. And let's all kind of get together and will this thing along as best we can. But until next time, let's all live our lives in a way we make more friends than enemies, and people can see a difference in the way we live.
Right now, Amazon is offering some amazing extra perks that come with a job offer. If you start a warehouse job, you can get a $1,000 sign-on bonus. That means you start earning a paycheck right away, plus you get extra cash to use before the holidays. Applying is so easy, you don't even need an interview. It's never been so rewarding to start an hourly job that's close to home. So what are you waiting for? To join the team today, visit Amazon.com/sign-on bonus. Amazon is an equal opportunity employer.
Tired of long waits and rushed care at the ER and urgent care clinic? Next time, stay home and let Dispatch Health bring the power of the hospital to you.
I call Dispatch Health. A care team of medical professionals actually come to your house.
They're the same caliber of people that you would see if you were at a hospital or an urgent care.
Dispatch Health can treat most non-life-threatening emergencies.
They can do the x-rays, they can do stitches.
Urinary tract infections, blood test, urinalysis, ultrasound.
It's almost everything that they can do at the ER.
You never feel rushed. They're there for you and only you.
I felt like their only patient.
And it costs no more than a trip to urgent care because Dispatch Health is covered by most insurance, including Medicare. See if we serve your home at dispatchhealth.com.
Dispatch Health really went above and beyond.
It's wonderful to have care come to your home.
House calls are back, and they're better than ever. Learn more at dispatchhealth.com.